Hey, back here on Weekend Joe, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura and Munganass Alton Toyota here on ClaibsOnline.com. Hey, we are just hours away from the 2022 postseason getting underway for the St. Louis Cardinals, and hey, we need to talk a little Cardinal baseball. So my guest right now, much like Jose Quintana, kind of came over halfway through the season and is now thrown right into the postseason mix. He is Matt Pauley from KMOX, and he joins us right now. Matt, what's going on?
Not much. We just really getting ready for the postseason. You're right. It's been fun for me. I was in Milwaukee when the year got started. I come to St. Louis, and obviously I'm in a little bit of a better spot right now.
You still have baseball to talk about out on the field. Absolutely. I mentioned Jose Quintana earlier today. It was announced that he is the Game 1 starter. You were there when Ali Marmol talked about it. So let's start with the guy that's going to be throwing the first pitch tomorrow. Any surprises at all with Quintana being the one to get the ball?
No surprise. I think the only question was it going to be Quintana or Michaelis in Game 1? And it's Quintana, and then Michaelis is going to go in Game 2. For me, it was very clear that those two guys were your top two guys, and I wouldn't have really been surprised with either of them getting the nod for Game 1. Quintana's just been really good, really consistent. His compete level on every single pitch. But just, think about this. Think how remarkable it is for his last 3 months going from a non-competitive situation to joining a team, kind of looking at him as rotational depth, middle of the rotation kind of guy, to now being the number one starter in the postseason for a division winner. It's pretty remarkable what's happened to him in just a few months.
And you think about, too, I mean, a guy that he said during his press conference today, said this is why we play baseball, to play in October. When Nolan Arenado, when Paul Goldschmidt, when those guys came over, they came over from just annually bad baseball teams. And they said, even this year, Nolan Arenado said the goal is to win the division. That's what we're playing for here. No more, no more wild card, no more play-in games. And it shows that when these players come here that they turn it on because they know what it means to play in October or how much it means to them to play in October.
Yeah, there were a couple times late in the season, whether they were playing the Pirates or whether they're playing the Reds, I look down, I'm just, what are the Pirates? What are the Reds thinking when they're sitting there doing play as visitors at Busch Stadium and people are going crazy and we got all the Pujols and Wainwright Molina stuff going on, and then they got to go back to their place and not even play in front of 10,000 people on any given night. It was really, it's always special in St. Louis, but it went to a different level here during the final couple months of this regular season, just because of everything that was going on for those notable achievements for those individuals. And people like Paul Goldschmidt, people like Nolan Arenado got to experience that all while winning the division. And now they get to go into postseason play. And we know, obviously, in St. Louis, postseason play and the way the fans are going to be, it's just going to be even more of what we've seen recently.
And then you have a guy like Albert Pujols, who for 11 years did that every single year, and then for the last decade didn't get the taste it once, and now he's back. And I mean, his second half has, I think Mo said it, magical for this season, and that's what it's been.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for him to get some MVP votes. Not
top 10. I think he's going to finish top 10.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. There was a point when he was with the Angels that he was statistically the worst player in Major League Baseball. And now we're talking about a guy who was maybe the most consistent hitter in the final month of the season for a division winner, who got to the 700 home runs when none of us thought really that he was probably going to get there when the season got started. And he's a guy that when we talk about the recipes for success for the postseason, this guy has to do this guy has to do this, so on and so forth. Well, Albert Pujols has to be a big part of this team scoring runs.
Yeah, I think Goldschmidt's going to win it. I think Arenado finishes top 5, and I really do think Pujols, and I don't know where Tommy Edman finishes. I don't know if both get into the top 10. If people want to look at the actual metrics, Tommy Edman should get votes for that top 10, but I do think Albert Pujols gets top 10 no matter what.
He should get votes. He should get top 10. He's been a top 5 hitter in the National League since the All-Star break, without a doubt. And even when he didn't have a great pre-All-Star break portion of the season, but when you take his overall, body of work and really take a look at the numbers and go beyond just batting average, home runs, and RBIs, when you look at those numbers a little bit more, you can make the case that he's a top 5 hitter in the National League for the entire season.
And I think tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon, Albert Pujols was brought in here to face lefties. That's what he was brought in here to do, was to start against lefties, come in late against lefties. We know that the Phillies are throwing 2 right-handers in the first 2 games. Albert Pujols is probably going to be in that starting lineup tomorrow, deservingly. He earned it.
Yeah, that's been confirmed. He is going to be the DH. Yeah. So you're going to see a more standard lineup now. Cardinals used a ton of lineups during the regular season. I think in a perfect world, they won't quite do that in the postseason. They'll have more of at least a standard righty lineup and a standard lefty lineup. But yeah, Albert Pujols is going to be the DH in those first 2 postseason games, without a doubt. He is part of the everyday lineup for the Cardinals.
Now, you say standard lineup. What did they go 1 through 9? Did he?
No, they didn't.
Okay, so let's talk about this lineup construction, because this is something that Rammer and I have been talking about here recently, because we saw down the stretch, we saw Ali Marmol bat Albert Pujols second, which before that even happened, I had joked about, hey, do you bat him leadoff and get him as many at-bats as possible? And they put him second to get him those at-bats. Now, I don't know if you bat Albert second in the postseason, but do you go Goldschmidt, Pujols, do you go with Goldschmidt back into that 2 spot with the way this lineup's been constructed lately and not really knowing who your top guys are at the top there?
I still like those guys going 3, 4, 5. I like Goldschmidt and Arenado being next to each other, because those are 2 MVP caliber bats that are you can't pitch around one of them when they're right next to each other. I think that's something, and it always feels like they're coming back up again. Going back to my time in Milwaukee and watching the Brewers play the Cardinals, it always felt like with those 2 guys, hey, weren't they just up last inning? Weren't they just up the inning before? So no, you're not. I don't think you're going to bat Pujols in the 2 spot. They were doing that largely because, especially against left-handers, so he could get more at bats. Whether he's in the 5 spot or maybe even in the 6 spot, we'll see. But for me, Goldschmidt and Arenado are your 3, 4 hitters without a doubt.
And that kind of brings up, another guy that we've seen have a really good second half of the season, who I also imagine is going to be in the lineup both games 1 and 2, and that's Corey Dickerson, a guy that I think injuries are what kept him on this roster through the month of July. And then he came back, and he too, much like Al, he has earned himself a starting spot right now in this Cardinal lineup.
Yeah, he went through that cold spell, and then he broke out of that with the the Grand Slam against Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly. I like Corey Dickerson. The thing that does scare me about him is when he goes cold, he goes really cold, and it lasts for a while. The other side of that is when he's hot, he's really hot. Obviously, we saw the streak of getting hit after hit after hit. I like Dickerson. I think there's a lot of options in the outfield. Obviously, what Lars Nootbaar has done in the second half, he's probably somebody that we're not talking about enough, quite honestly, because I think his performance in the second half of the season has been another big reason. It's all about roster lineup depth. You can't just the problem with the Cardinals in the first half of the season was it was Arenado and Goldschmidt and not a whole lot else. And then you get into the second half season and you start seeing the contributions from a Lars Nootbaar, from a Brendan Donovan, from a Tommy Edman, from all those guys, and obviously Albert Pujols as well. And that's what really, I think, changed this team. So there's a lot of different choices that they have to make, and there's a lot of depth in the outfield. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see what it looks like 1 through 9 when they get that thing going.
And Mo has come out and said that the rosters will be finalized by this evening. They don't need to do it until tomorrow morning, but he's going to have things finalized by tonight. I think the one guy that everyone's going to be looking at is Paul DeJong. And if his name is on that roster, was anything mentioned about him Thursday afternoon?
No, nothing was. And for me, he just hasn't hit well enough for me to really want to see him on that roster. But then on the other side of it, well, who are you putting in his place? Like, I know a lot of people are still very high on Nolan Gorman. I think he's going to be a really, really good player, but he went into a really bad slump with the Cardinals, and then that slump absolutely continued when he got to AAA Memphis. So he hasn't hit for the better part of the last 6 weeks, really, at the big league level or the minor league level. I mean, we can we can get into the weeds and say, well, maybe this guy deserves a shot or this guy deserves a shot. So if somebody was pushing Paul DeJong, I don't think he would be on the postseason roster. I just don't know if anybody's pushing him, and it might be he's on the postseason roster almost by default.
Yeah, I think I mean, the offensive side of things, you wouldn't have thought at the beginning of the year that you would have this many questions about the offensive side of that postseason roster. But I think you're looking at it now when you got about 3 or 4 guys for about 2 spots there at the end. And some of that has to do with Tyler O'Neill's injury. And then the other spots are just kind of, all right, how do you fill it at the end? But on the pitching side, though, I think that is more set, especially now that JoJo Romero and Dakota Hudson cannot be on the wild card roster or the divisional series roster. So I think that makes things a little more clear on that side. But after you get through those games 1 and 2, what are your thoughts on how they go about game 3?
Yeah, so that's a big question, and it probably depends a lot on what happens in games 1 and 2. They did announce today, even though the roster hasn't been announced, they did announce that all 5 starters were going to be on the roster. So that means Jordan Montgomery and Adam Wainwright are going to be on the roster, along with Jack Flaherty, even though they are not set. So if you get through games 1 and 2, and if Quintana and Michaelis give you like a standard start, 6-7 innings, and then you're able to use your bullpen in a standard kind of way, then you're set up that you can go with whoever you want in that 3rd game. And to me, it's probably Jordan Montgomery, because I think they really, just based off the things that have been said recently, it feels like they're looking for big time, high leverage moments for Jack Flaherty. And I think we're going to see him as a true high leverage reliever. And if they're close games in the first 2 games, I would expect to see Flaherty used in one of those first 2 games in that kind of role. And if you know you're going to get a short outing from him, all of a sudden, he tops out at 97. Well, he can consistently hit 97 if he knows that he's only going to be going an inning or 2, or maybe just comes in to get out of a dicey situation. But yeah, if you're in a spot where Quintana gives you 2 innings and you're stuck in a situation where you're bringing a Wainwright or you're bringing in a Montgomery early on to just try to save yourself in one of those first 2 games, then what happens in game number 3? I have no idea.
Yeah, and I guess on the other side, I have not seen anything come through yet from any press conferences. Were the Phillies there? Were the Phillies down at Busch Stadium today, just not available to the media yet?
They did a media session later in the afternoon. Actually, it's going on as we're speaking right now. So yeah, I know they're there and doing a media session. I don't know what's being said.
This is something I noticed yesterday, and it surprised me, but it is, it makes sense when you look at how kind of wacky the end of the season was for so many teams. I mean, the Cardinals playing the Pirates 6 times. That's, that never happens. And it only happened because of the way the schedule had to be adjusted this year. But the Phillies have not been home. They have not been in Philadelphia since September 25th. So if they make it to Sunday's game, that will be 2 full weeks of them being on the road, playing out of, sleeping in hotels, playing out of their suitcases, what have you. And that's, yeah, these guys are used to it, but that's something that catches up with, that can catch up with you at a, certain amount of time.
We all want to sleep in our own beds. They're staying in nice hotels. They're sleeping on nice beds. They're eating nice food. They're not at their home. They may not be with their families. They've been on lots of planes. They're on a bus every day going to the ballpark. There's just a lot of things that kind of take it out of you. And it's not the end of you, but it takes, little pieces, little chips out of you. You just know, how tired are you when you get home from a vacation? A vacation is one of the greatest things that you can do, but you're tired when you get home from a vacation. It is tiring to travel.
And that too, I mean, even if they do make it past the Cardinals, they don't get to go home after this either. So it's another 4 days after that too. And at some point, maybe they just give up and they say, whatever, we're done. All right.
I want to see my wife again.
And maybe, maybe some of them have young kids at home and they're just real happy they're getting some sleep at night too. We have to do our research into that.
That's the way it is with the Cardinals with all the newborns. Is it 5 players who have kids?
Is it that many now?
It's 4 or 5. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's sleep. Yeah, stay in the hotels down by St. Louis. That's just walk across the street to the ballpark. and get your sleep. What are as you look at this Phillies team? It's been a while since the Cardinals have seen them. What are some of the things that you are really focusing on as far as when you kind of get into the pregame show and everything else tomorrow?
Yeah, for me, there's two big keys. First off, when you're facing Nola and you're facing Wheeler, try to get them out early because those two guys are really good pitchers and they're going to cause issues. It's not easy to score runs against them, but the Phillies do not have a great bullpen. So if you can run them, if you can take a lot of pitches, force them into some work and get them out early, I think that goes a long way towards winning. And the other thing is just keep Schwarber and Harper in the ballpark. That's another thing with Quintana. Quintana's given up one home run as a Cardinal. Keep those two guys in the ballpark, and that goes a long way towards the Phillies not scoring runs.
That's right. I mean, the first time through, they didn't see Bryce Harper the first time through. So we'll see how they go about pitching them. We know Steven Matz and Zach Thompson are both going to be on that roster too. And those are guys that we'll see how good they are at being lefty specialists, I guess.
Yeah, and Matz is interesting because he can be used in that role, but also he's been a starter. So if you do have a game where your starter doesn't go deep, you get 3 innings out of a starter. Do you feel like you can go get 2 or 3 innings from Matz to kind of get the game back on track? It's good to have those type of pieces there that you can use in so many different ways. This is a roster that's got both from a pitching standpoint and from a hitting standpoint. There's a lot of flexibility, and that's big in the postseason.
How are you feeling going into this series? You feeling pretty confident in the Cardinals going on to the next round?
Yeah, I think the Cardinals win. Playing at home is a big thing. They played so well at home. They were able to set themselves up because they clinched the division so early. So guys got rested. Nobody's tired. Some of the guys at the back end of the bench got a few more at bats than they normally would have. So maybe that helps them be a little bit sharp. Would have you liked to have seen the Cardinals score a few more runs in the final 2 weeks of this? Sure. Like, we can't argue that. The offense has been inconsistent recently, but I'm not overly worried about that right now, and I do think the Cardinals win this series.
We will see how it plays out tomorrow, 1 o'clock, or Friday, 1 o'clock is is game one. Those shadows are going to come into play late in the game. Those shadows. We saw them we saw them in that Sunday game. We saw them. They got a little preview of those in the Sunday game against the Pirates the other day. Those get a lead early, and then you don't have to worry about seeing the ball and hitting the ball late in the game.
The national TV broadcast, it's like in the postseason, it's like, because there's all these day games. It's like these broadcasters have never seen shadows before because all of a sudden, all they talk about for the better part of 2 hours is the shadows.
It's, but it seems to always play a major factor, at least at Busch. It really, I mean, when it gets to be about 3:30 in October, those shadows really do play a role.
Yeah, they do. I mean, obviously it becomes a lot more challenging to hit because of the lighting situation. But it is funny how that always becomes a storyline.
He is Matt Pauley. You can catch him pregame, postgame. You guys have all sorts of stuff planned for the postseason over on KMOX. I know Danny Max joining your crew. I know Claves has told me about all the other stuff that you guys have planned for all of your shows, and you guys do it the right way over there. And you know what? It's because they've had a lot of practice over there on how to do postseason coverage.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really excited to have Dan McLaughlin part of the broadcast. He's going to be doing some play-by-play, and also there's going to be some roundtable segments with him along with Claves and also John Rooney and Ricky Horton, where those four are going to just be talking baseball for a couple segments during the pregame show. So it's going to be really, really fun, and we encourage people to listen in.
He is Matt Pauley, and hey, hopefully we have a few other times to talk with you this month. That means the Cardinals are going to go a long way. You can hear him on KMOX, and this has been Weekend Joe, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura and Mungenast Alton Toyota here on ClaibsOnline.com.